Thank you. The 40 years makes me sound old, you know? We have to deal with that. Yes, I actually am a recovering academic. I retired 2 years ago and sort of walked away from education to a certain extent. However, I still sort of communicate with my students daily and through Facebook and find out all their children, you know, and their kids that are, it's a beautiful thing when you have that many years of former students to deal with on a daily basis. But you know, you can't get this out of your blood, can you? That you're a teacher. It's really a lifestyle. It's not a job. It's a way of life. That was really brought home this last weekend when Nicolette and I, where's Nicolette? She's around here someplace. Wave your hand. Did she leave on me? My wife's here, so we'll get there. She's trying to hide. We went up to Flagstaff, and it immediately reminded me of Lincoln, Nebraska. It's sort of a university town, you know, and the kids are walking around sort of uninhibited, and they have ideals, and all of a sudden I'm going in and we're having, you know, breakfast at a little place, and I'm seeing that there's somebody looking at a biochem, and I'm going, ooh, taking biochem? Yes. And you want to go over Krebs cycle with me? I could, you know, help. You can't get away from being a teacher. It's part of you. So I'm trying to work on that. We got out of Flag and we came back, you know, to reality. I have a couple goals today that I think would be sort of fun. We're going to sort of look at some issues related to stress and nutrition and nurture, environment, all these wonderful things related to brain sense. And along with that, I have a couple goals that I just really need to articulate right up front. And as a result of being together, lofty goal, I want none of us to be the same again. I want to create connections in the next hour that last a lifetime. We are never going to be the same as a result of being together for these days. And that's a cool thing to think about, that there are going to be changes that occur in your brain that are lasting. And that's what happens every day in your classroom. I taught for 40 years, and I was forced to have syllabus, you know, most of those years. And I always put this statement in my syllabus, and it always scared the heck out of kids when they're coming in. The statement was that the course you're about to enter is intended to be transformational, not just informational. And I say that to this group because I'm going to be right up front with you. This is a persuasional talk, not an informational talk, okay? And I make no apologies for that. I have a passion, I have to share it. It goes beyond information. If you want information, go read a book. But we really, as a group, need to figure out what we're going to do to start this school year off right for our kids. And I can't think of a better time, by the way. We've sort of had our break. It's time to start gearing up again. So this is the time to really give it some thought. I also need to share that I'm not going to offer anything new today, because effective practice is effective practice. And you are the experts. And I have no intention of coming in here and telling you how to teach. What I think I have to offer, though, is some insights into the why. This have always bothered me as a scientist, because I was first a scientist and then an educator. And as a result, I went in and people were telling me to do X, Y, Z, but I kept asking, why? Do you have kids like that? Yeah, they want to know why. You deserve those answers. And you know, what's exciting is that we're entering into an age where we're actually starting to learn the why. 30 years ago, fine, we knew that this worked. Now, let's figure out why it works. So we're going to play with that a little bit. Takeaways from this. We're going to talk a little bit about the evolution and learning and brain and how that fits together. We're going to look about how to optimize learning. And we're going to really put practice on this. I want to give you some ideas and takeaway. The introduction from Rachel was beautiful because it reminded me of something that my kids always picked up from one of my exemplary teachers I sent them to visit. And the statement was, ask 3 before me. You heard that one? So this young gentleman ran his classes where, you know, you're all working here. You make sure you ask 3 people about what the assignment is before you come bug me. So it's just sort of it was part of his teaching criteria. And I'm going to leave you today with a challenge. I'm going to leave you a challenge to be a learner and a lifelong learner. Boy, the data is coming out. See, at my age, I read a little different literature than I used to, and now I read about dementia. and I can tell you, the literature is crystal clear that if you really want to hold off on that, you got to be active mentally into your hundreds. So we really need to work on that and make sure that happens. So first of all, Rachel sort of set the tone for this, but I need a favor. Just for about 5 minutes, I want you to be 8th graders. All right? Be careful. I intentionally said 8th graders because they're a little more subdued than 7th graders. So I think we're going to be okay with 8th grade. But I just want you to role play with me a little bit because I'm convinced that a lot of this information needs to be given to students and not just to you. They need to know about self. They need to know about their brain. So somewhere in your school, you need to find somebody who's willing to help kids understand self and understand the biology, because we're going to be going through some things today that, yes, you need to know, and yes, your parents need to know, but your kids need to know. All right? By the way, I'm hoping that you're thinking in your mind, not only I'm going to use this in my class and I'm going to help my kids understand their own brain, I would like people in here to think about doing parent workshops about brain. The first one I did with a PTA, the parents came up, and the first lady came up to me, she says, "I am mad." "Oh, I'm sorry." She says, no, I'm mad that I have a child and I have a school and nobody has taught me these things. And nobody's told me the things I need to know about sleep, about nutrition, about how to prepare my child to maximize learning. Yeah, so think about this stuff for parents as well. So, okay, in a moment we're going to sort of run 4 or 5 minutes of what I might do with kids to introduce some of the major features associated with the brain. So, be thinking about that and I will get ready to do it. Are you ready? Okay. Now, here's the warm-up. We're going to do a little warm-up, and the warm-up is, we're going to contrive this to be a little bit of a military setting, and so when I ask a question, do you know the right response? Sir, yes, sir. Okay. So, are you ready? Oh, thanks for Rachel. She's great. She got everything setting up for us. Okay, let's take a look at this. Let's see if your Broca's area is ready to work today and ready to do some things. All together, I want you to read what comes up on the screen together. A big black bug bit a big black bear and made the big black bear bleed blood. That means you have voice. The Broca's allows you to talk. Let's look at the, well, there it is. Let's go on to the next area. The Winnicke's. And this is beautiful. Tell me what you see. And next. Okay. See, this is a beautiful thing because this takes images and turns it into language. And you can actually, if you have a deficit in either of these areas, for example, the Broca's area, if you have a deficit, you can fully understand, you can't talk. And the inverse is true. So it's crucial that those areas work together. Now let's move up to the prefrontal cortex. We're going to look at the frontal lobe, and I want you to interpret what you see. Once upon a time. How about this one? Okay, one more, and this one's going to be a hard one. The inside story, or... All right. The whole story. That could be another one. Okay. All right, hover up temporal lobe. As soon as you hear this, tell me what song you might be hearing. Oh, The Wizard of Oz. How exciting. Yes, that means that your temporal lobes are working. Let's look at the occipital. The occipital, of course, is going to be vision. Let's see if your vision is working today. Tell me what you see. You see a lady? Or a skull? Who cannot see both? Can everybody see both? Okay, let's do another one. And I never can remember whether I click once or twice. Okay. Do you see two there? There's a witch, and does anybody not see? There's the pretty lady's little nose, little cute little nose and her ear. And of course, the witch has a big nose. Okay. So we've got all these parts working. Let's try one more. This one's hard. Look at the instructions, boys and girls. The instructions are, I want you to tell me the color and not the words. And I'm going to start with real easy. But let's go through, and I'm going to point to the colors. You tell me the colors. Purple, gray, yellow, green, brown, purple, brown. Oh, I don't know. Now, I said that was the easy part. Now let's do it this way. Remember, same rules. All I want is the color. Some of you were not saying much. The Stroop's test is used for ability to make decisions, and it's time test, it's attentiveness, and able to pull together information in some creative ways. And so it's sort of fun. Here's one that I love. Who are in this picture? Who do you see? Okay. The other person I really don't know. You know? But certainly that's Barack, right? The brain is designed to make decisions with as little information as possible. It really doesn't take in all the information. It makes decisions quickly. For example, we have virtually no practice, except on South Park, working with faces that are upside down. And so consequently, we don't notice data that doesn't fit the norm. We ignore that bit of data. Your students are ignoring things, and not intentionally in some cases. It just doesn't fit into what they have at their disposal. So facial recognition is a good example of that. I'm going to do one more, memory test. I'll put this on the screen just for 4 seconds, and I want you to see if you can remember it. Okay, and let's see if you got it right. Okay. And that was the original. Now, what you just did is a beautiful thing. You clustered information. You made something that was very, very difficult rather simple, because it's really just composed of 4 pieces. And this is a teaching technique that's absolutely crucial. It's called the Rule of 7. Some people are already on top of Rule of 7 for me. Let's reiterate it for others, okay? It means really, as an adult and above 15, for the most part, you can handle 7 bits of information and pull that together. Telephone numbers, social security numbers. I mean, there's some things in our world that aren't just by chance, folks. It's what people can remember. However, I said age 15. Here's what happens when you're 13. You can only remember 6 bits of information. Now, we're working with some of your kids now. We're down to 11. And now we have 5. Now we have 4. And a 7th grader can only handle 3 bits of information and pull that together. Right? Age 7. Age 7. And now I'm going to go down to that lovely age. Rachel, are you still here? Okay. Yes, young children. You see, they can really only handle 2 bits of information. But here's the problem. This is not a real precise science. Plus or minus 2. There are days your 5-year-old can't really comprehend anything. And now you get to smile and go, yep, plus or minus 2. That's what's going on with that one. So what do you do? What you have to do is like you did with those numbers. It's called clustering. You have to cluster information together so that you can make stuff hang together with some meaning so that you don't have this multitude of things to learn. You cluster it. And that really does help, like our phone numbers. We have an area code, and then you got some stuff in the middle, and then you got the end. Every one of us break those into 3 components. We cluster. It's really sort of cool. Okay, we're going to cool down for a moment. Here's how we're going to cool down. Rachel made the comment again, and I want to reiterate it. Didn't you get a handout when you came in? Let me tell you about the handout. I only have an hour with you, and I want a semester. So I read a book last week, and I got excited about the book. And I thought, ain't no way I have time to talk about this book. So those are my notes. One of my grad students pointed out, she says, you know, you've said this to us for years, but those are your notes. There's no context. And she says, I think I know what you meant by some of those, but I don't know why some of them excited you. I behoove you to read the book, because I thought it was a good one. And it's all about, and I almost hate to use the word because in some context it may not be appropriate, I guess people think this way, but you see, there's an evolution. As a biologist, I understand that we really were tribal, that we lived in groups of 50 to 75 people for thousands of years, and we know how to work socially. It's part of our brain. And yet we have schools, and especially in the Western world, we deal with individuals. And we have individuals isolated. It's not natural. The book is really about trying to make kids feel like they're part of a family and that they're loved and that there's a relationship when they enter that room. And it's a safe relationship. You're going to have another keynote on bullying. Bullying is a name for an issue that's much bigger. And that is a failure to thrive because of fear and a lack of an environment that is loving. And it's your responsibility, I'm sorry, it is, to set that tone in the room that I care about each of you. I care. I truly care. And by the way, some kids won't believe you. And some kids won't believe you all year. But you never give up on a child. There's never a responsibility. You cannot give up on a child. We cannot. We can't. We have to act like a parent that will always have hope. And we have to keep that hope in our heart. So the handout I gave you are just my things I thought were really neat insights in that book, and maybe you'll like that too. Now, I want you to take just 2 minutes. Because I said we are serious about relationships, A, we've sat too long. B, we need to stand, and you need to just sort of look around you and say hello to someone you don't know and find out what they teach. Go for it. Well, I hope you met somebody that you're going to have a chance now to engage with again during the course of the next day or so. So that'll be wonderful. Let's talk about what I did and why I did it. Some prerequisites for learning. And basically what we have is, first of all, novelty. The brain is a novel-seeking organ. It notices things that are different. Wearing a lab coat and a silly hat and asking you to role play with me is novel. Kids like novel. They really do. When they say, what are we doing today? What they're really saying is, are we doing the same old crap? Yeah. You know? And you better have an answer for that, folks. You better have an answer for that. My advisor is always in my heart, because he really did form that kind of relationship with me. And he always said that if a child knows what to expect before they come to class, you've already lost them. So it's sort of an interesting challenge that we have. In addition, though, voice and choice become crucial. The brain likes to make decisions. I didn't say let them do anything they want. I said choice. You can either do the lab or the worksheet. If you do the lab, you get to work with people, but if you act up, you're going to do the worksheet. Which would you prefer doing? So it's choices. You control that choice, but they do need to make choices. The brain likes that. And lastly, physical needs. That comes back to that comment earlier about bullying, and you're going to have to deal with that. If you cannot identify any of the problems that children are having in the room with physical needs up front, learning is stopped cold. And that includes temperature, room setting, stress. And some of these kids have come in the morning, coming out of families with fights going on, with no breakfast, with anger. And you have to deal with that because they're coming to you. You are the surrogate parent for those children, and their physical needs have to be met first. Okay, we've sort of talked about this, and let me tell you why I did what I did. After 10 minutes, an audience sort of goes off task. This is what it looks like. And so you're out of it. And I recognize that. And you recognize that as teachers. You see it in your class. Well, it might be time to do something different. They don't seem to be with me. It's interesting, though, that kids sort of learn what a 40, 50-minute class is because they start gearing up again when it's time to leave. So they recognize that. So what do you have to do? You can't just change everything you do every 5 to 10 minutes. But what you can do is inject change. Now what's happening? A story, a short video, an activity, things that just keep the mind going, keep it active. Real briefly, some neuron background. Not heavy biology. It's just a simple neuron. We have a whole bunch of them. Rachel, your child right now has about 525 billion neurons. Okay? By age 2, your child will have 200 billion. And it goes down by age 12 to 100, and as adults we lose about 10. There goes another one. There. Probably needed that one. So we're actually born half-brained to start with, so we lose a lot of it. So you're losing it, but you got to keep active. We still have plenty. Don't worry. We got plenty there. So what you really have is your job. I want to talk about your job is to grow dendrites. Your job is to make connections. And it's a neat way to think about it. And this came to me. I was studying, and I just finished a book. Well, Sir Robinson, Ken Robinson. How many are familiar with Sir Ken Robinson? He's a wonderful, wonderful speaker, a good writer. And I had just finished a book several years ago by Ken Robinson. And he had sort of triggered, he didn't say it this way, but this is what he meant. He meant that you're growing dendrites. And in fact, we hear all the time, the more you learn, the more you know. But it's really the inverse that's important to you and to your kids. The more you know, the more you learn. And I had just finished that book, and I was sitting on the beach in Brazil, and I was introduced for the first time to a drink called caipirinha. Anybody know what caipirinha is? Good. Oh, there's one. Otto back there has had caipirinha. Poor Otto. And so I'm going, I don't know Portuguese, and I'm going, this is awesome. What it is grain alcohol with sugar and a mashed up lime, and it tastes like lemonade, and you drink it like lemonade, but it's pure alcohol. And so it's just, it's vicious stuff. So I'm going, I got to remember caipirinha, but that's a weird name. My advisor again was with me, and he says, well, obviously it has a derivation in Latin. It's very similar to words in Italian and Spanish, and there are French derivations as well. And so he says it's easy to remember. Yeah, because he speaks 7 languages. He has places to tie this to. I have none. I can't even spell well. And I'm supposed to remember this word. And so the more you know, the more you learn. You've got to get your kids to understand that they just need to know this stuff because it all fits together. It's beautiful. So let's move on. So here's what we want. We want your brain to look like this and not like this. We want you to learn more. I'm going to go right into a rule I made up, but I'll give you the science to it. It's called the 30-90-10 rule. Because in all of my studies of how to build a protein marker, because you're building dendrites, what you're really doing is building a protein marker. It's simple biology and chemistry. And here's what you have to do. To build a protein marker, you have to mentally take what I'm saying and do something with it in the first 30 seconds. If you don't, it's gone. But if you do something with it within the first 30 seconds, go, hey, this rule of 30, 90, 10 might be useful. I'm going to think about that. Now I've got it there for 90 minutes. But if you don't do something with it again in 90 minutes, it's gone. And the scary part is the 10 hours. From 8 to 10 hours, a protein marker will exist in the brain. And if in that 8 to 10 hours you do not go into REM sleep or revisit it, it's gone. This is a crucial rule for educators. Here's what it looks like in a lot of the classrooms that I've worked with. And by the way, it works better in middle school because middle schools actually have a model that high schools should have of communities and working in groups. So here's what happens. At least once a week in the schools I've worked with, they have a 3x5 card. It's 3x5 card day. The team has decided this. you're going to write down 3 things that were really crucial out of today's class. Just 3. 3 things that you really need to remember from today's class. So bell rings, we go down to the next class. I said I'd stand in front of you once in a while, Todd. So you go to the next class and the teacher goes, tell me the 3 things you learned in the previous class. And all of a sudden we've brought it back up and we've gone through this. Oh, by the way, take your note card home tonight. You know what your homework assignment is. Go over that before you go to bed. Don't do it every day because it loses novelty. Periodically do it when it's a crucial set of lessons that the team wants to really develop. If I said team because you see each teacher has to ask what the previous teacher did. They all have to work together. And it helps you too as a teacher go, wow, I didn't know they were doing that first period. That's cool. So it makes more of a team effort. Okay, so that's the rule here. 30 seconds, 90 minutes, 10 hours. You like that one? I should write about that one. Let's move into what I'm supposed to be talking about. Brain sense. We're going to start right off with, and it says I should be at 30 minutes, and I'm not. I'm already over. So we're going to go faster. Stress. This is your class. They're a little fragile, folks, just a little fragile. As a result of being a little fragile, we can easily hijack the amygdala. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I'll tell you this. Stress, there's 2 paths to actions. There's a path through the prefrontal cortex, that's called thinking, and there's a direct path to actions that goes through the amygdala. And it's for fight and flight. And when you're stressed, everything goes through the amygdala. And you have kids that are acting on their amygdala. And if you teach them this, you can say things like that. I really need you in the prefrontal cortex. I don't need any more amygdala out of you. Okay. So what happens is during the course of the day, we have bullying that takes place and all these wonderful things, and then we get stressed. And it takes 5 good things to counteract 1 bad thing. I want you to think about that ratio in your classroom. So don't just say, get over it. It doesn't work that way. Even a hug doesn't get rid of it. 5 to 1 to get rid of it. And what's going on is your body has been flooded by cortisol. On the playground, when somebody pushed you or beat you up, your body gets flooded, and that cortisol lasts in your body from 2 to 4 hours. And the only way to get it out faster than 2 to 4 hours is to have loving, caring components take place in your life to counteract that. So it's really a fascinating thing. There's a certain amount of stress that needs to occur. Peter Senge had this beautiful analogy of a rubber band between 2 hands. And he said, if you just have your hands together with no tension, basically nothing happens. But if you put a little bit of tension in there, you can keep people moving with you. Too much tension, you break the rubber band. And that's what happens with stress. And every child's different, so you can't just establish one rule for we're going to do this today, because some children need that variability. So taming stress, we all know there are things you can do to help. I don't want to dwell on the whole list. There are things you can do to help, bottom line. There are a couple books that are fun. Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers is a fun read. It's a one-trick zebra, but it's still a good book. And the story is based on the fact that a zebra is out in the savannah and it's eating grass, and along comes a lion and starts chasing it. And one of 2 things are going to happen within 2 minutes. The zebra is going to get eaten, or he's going to outrun the lion and get away. As a result, guess what he does? He goes into therapy for years. You know, he goes to all his friends and says, you cannot believe what happened to me today. No, he goes back to eating grass. Only humans hang on to crap forever. You know, it happens. Okay, I'm going to skip that one today. We're going to go right into exercise. Exercise is such a crucial component. I'm going to have you listen to 2 minutes of this gentleman.
Scandal number 1, where the only mystery lies in why we're not fixing it. If you were to design an almost perfect anti-brain learning environment, it would look something like this. And if you were to design an almost perfect anti-brain working environment, it would look something like this. Why? Because tiny proteins called BDNFs are actually created when you exercise and act like Miracle-Gro for your brain. Brain rule number 1, exercise boosts brain power. So, this is your child's brain in the classroom. This is your child's brain on the playground, at least if he's moving. And likewise, this is your brain at work. And this is your brain walking to work. Let's look at that in the actual setting. Here are your kids in the classroom. And here are your kids on the playground. And, once again, here is your employee at work, and here is your employee on the way to work. The problem lies in the fact that we measure distance today in terms of the space between the refrigerator, bathroom, and couch. Says Robert Hutchins, "Whenever I feel like exercise, I lie down until the feeling passes." Our ancestors, on the other hand, walked an average of 12 miles a day, and hence the brain developed as a survival organ that was designed to solve problems in an unstable environment in almost constant motion. If our ancestors had laid around, well, let's just say that evolution didn't favor the sedentary types. So, what are we to do? Well, if I were an employer, I would want this brain working for me instead of this one. Wouldn't that just be good business? Motivated employees who are more productive, since exercise aids all areas of executive function, like concentration, impulse control, foresight, problem solving. We'd get employees who are more creative, and equally significant, employees who are healthier. Do you know that Starbucks actually spends more on healthcare costs than they do on coffee beans? What if we could cut those costs by having healthier and happier employees? How do we do this? Well, maybe we could use our brains. How about encouraging employees to have walking meetings or take phone calls on the move? You can create a treadmill conference room or a moving workstation where you could do your emails while you exercised. Or try a lower tech solution. Or mix it all together and get creative. We still don't know much about how the brain works, but the little we do know suggests that the way we behave at school or at work needs some serious rethinking.
Okay, how many are familiar with Brain Rules with Dr. John Medina? Oh, so that was new for you? I'll have a picture of his book, but it's called Brain Rules. And if you go on the web, actually, there are 12 short videos like this. And I'm using this one. I may use one more yet this morning. So there's some videos that would really help your kids and your staff, for that matter. And there are 12 neat rules. Exercise. It does really boost. It's crucial. BDNF is a protein that is absolutely crucial to learning. So we got to have some activity. Please don't cut phys ed out because you need to study for the exams. You just have to have exercise. If you really want to know more about exercise, my favorite book is Reddy's Spark out of Harvard. And if you really are into exercise and want to understand the biology of exercise and learning, John is the expert in the world. Nutrition. I originally had the N stand for nutrition, and after reading that book that I gave you the handout on, I have no choice but to include nurture. I can't. They're both crucial, and so we've had to add a double N in here about nurture. And you know, one of the examples he gives in here that makes sense to me is the combination of nature and nurture. Nature, of course, is the biology, the genes you end up with. He says, imagine a huge, long keyboard composed of your genes. And then along comes experiences. And experiences turn on and turn off specific genes. And that's where the combination of nature and nurture fits together. You are inheriting somebody that has a natural gene pool, but some of those genes have been turned on and some have been turned off. And some of them are causing trouble in your classrooms as a result. Have to recognize that and work with both. So it's both nature and nurture for this discussion. The dangers of skipping breakfast. I wrote a blog on this yesterday after thinking about, I added this yesterday morning because I skipped breakfast. So here's what's happening. This was a new article that just came out. That chances of heart attack, 27% increase when you're skipping breakfast. Oh, okay, the women in here are going, yeah, not my problem. Here's what happens. It's even scarier for women. If they skip breakfast just once a week, 20% increase in diabetes. These studies, and this was with 47,000 people that they were doing this study on in England. So just fascinating things. Here's what happens without breakfast. We know it. You get a sugar high in insulin. As good as the donuts look this morning, I had yogurt and some muskmelon in there, okay? Because what you want is some protein. Protein breaks down slower. We are not marathon runners. Marathon runner says, I need to carb load. Yeah, if you're a marathon runner, every day carb load. The rest of us better have some protein. It takes 4 ounces of protein to really get your brain going in the morning. And your kids need to know that. Their parents need to know that. And if your kids are coming without that, Rachel, in your school, you're going to have to provide breakfast. You're going to have to do something to help those kids get the fuel they need. Your brain burns 20% of the glucose that it takes in. 20%. It's only 3 pounds, and it burns 20% of the energy you take in. Okay, so what do you need? Half your plate should be fruits and vegetables, some carbs, and protein. Please don't forget the protein. And if you want to know more about this stuff, The Compass of Pleasure is an interesting book. Don't read it in public. Well, I'm being honest with you. It's all about how every one of us get our dopamine load in one way or another. And they're called addictions. And we get our dopamine in some fashion. And some of us love to eat for dopamine, others work out for dopamine. And it has a beautiful section that I was reading on the airplane and hadn't realized that I had a whole chapter on orgasms. And then I realized it was probably because they're both reading my book. Get your own book. Sleep. So let's deal with sleep a little bit. Adolescent brain development. These are scary figures. Look at this. Middle school, high school students' bodies tend to stay up later and get up later. And yet we ask them to live in an adult world. We have calculus at 8 in the morning. No, it doesn't work. They're not alive and awake until almost 10 o'clock, folks. Okay? And we know that as teachers. See, as I said, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. We already know these things. This is the one that scares me. And here's how the study was done. They took classrooms and they said, we're going to run a little activity for a little while. I want everybody to lay their head down on their desk and just relax. And I'm not even going to tell you how long, but you're going to get a chance to just relax this morning. So lay your head down on your desk. And in 3 minutes, they said, everybody wake up now. 50% of them were out. That's called sleep deprivation. And that's what it looks like. Right? And people don't realize how crucial sleep is. When you think about a newborn, 10 to 18 hours, and Rachel's going, yes, I hope for the 18. And then we have infants, 14 to 15, toddlers, 12 to 14. We get preschoolers, 11 to 13, 1st through 8th grade. Need 9 to 11 hours. It ain't happening, folks. It ain't happening. Our society is designed, it's moving faster than our biology. Our culture and technology is moving faster than our biology. We think we can multitask. We can't. I didn't even have time for that talk, but just know you can't do it. So don't do it. And then adolescents, here, teens, 8.5 to 9 hours, not happening. Not happening. And then adults. Parents need to know this. Kids need to know this. And I'll tell you, I got enough time. I actually grew up, I'm convinced as a child, I was, Midwestern work ethic on the farm. And I know they rocked me to bed by saying, if you're awake, you work. If you're awake, you work. If you're awake, you work. And so I had this guilt. Every time I'd go to bed, I felt guilty that I'm not working. I am wasting time, until I got into the brain literature. Because now I'm learning. I have to get into REM sleep 3, 4, 5 times in a 90-minute cycle. I have to do that every night to learn. And it's exciting. I want to go over, I am going to skip this one, but you're going to get those, right? You're going to take a look at those films online. They're good. Suggestions for better sleep. Exercise daily. Then you're tired. Let's look at some others. Limit naps to 30 minutes. If you go over 45, you start going into deep sleep, and then you wake up, you're more tired than you were. And so 30 minutes is a rule. That'll be safe for you. And by the way, I don't know where this Western, I work in South America all the time. I love it. They got their act together. They take siestas. Things close down. We are becoming more of a society indoors, and melatonin is a very, very real phenomena. And melatonin is what activates our body's system to start shutting down and getting ready for sleep. And actually, I put down here afternoon sun, which is crucial, but here's the real problem, folks, and we're all guilty of it. I'm going to bed. See ya. I'm going to just read emails. And I've got high noon sun sticking into my eyes. We talk about the 2 receptors. There's a 3rd receptor in there that just reacts to melatonin. And what you're doing is you're reestablishing high noon with screens in front of your face. If you go to my Twitter account, there's a picture of me laying in bed wearing red goggles because I'm protecting myself. And I also turn down the screen intensity sometimes. In other words, I still have this bad habit, but at least I recognize you got to get rid of the high noon. Let's look at some others. If you're not sleeping, get up. Bed is for sleeping, and so you need to do that. Avoid caffeine, alcohol, and tobacco after lunch. I don't know how you interpret that, but it sounds like we're all overdue right now. Okay? I wrote that and I thought, it's okay, it makes it so much more than a breakfast drink, Consistent patterns. Go to bed the same time, get up the same time, avoid heavy evening meals, good sleep environment. It's dark, it's good temperatures. And lastly, this one came to mind recently. I had a conversation with someone that will go unnamed. And I said, so what do you think about before you go to bed? And they said, I think about everything I didn't get done. I think about all the things I have to do tomorrow. I have to get this schedule going. I go, wow, you do that? I guess we've never had this conversation. Why? What do you do? I think about everything I accomplished. I think about everything that was good. I think about the things that really worked. You can do that. It's a fight, but you can do that. Because the good things did happen during the day. Fight that. Fight that urge to set up the brain just flaring before you try to go to sleep. Some good books. There's Brain Rules. John also has Brain Rules for Babies. Rachel, it's ready for you. And let's talk briefly about the learning environment. What do your kids learn from you in 90 seconds? You see, the research indicates that they will decide whether they're going to learn from you within the first 90 seconds of coming into your room. Hi, I'm Ron. I'm going to be your teacher today. I'm excited. Whoa, something's different. Never had a teacher do that before. Maybe there's something here. You set the tone. If you're off in the corner trying to get crap together that should have been done the night before, and you say, shut up! I'm trying to get this ready for you. And they're coming in going, okay, is the room inviting? Or does it look like this? Let's look a little bit about what our senses pick up. I could do a whole talk on color, but colors send different messages to kids. And you need to use colors with an intent. as to what you're trying to pull off. Your rooms, if your room is flaring with yellows, it's going caution, caution. So there are messages that come across with each color. And lighting becomes crucial. If you have really dim light, it is relaxing, but your attention wanes. And so you have to watch the lighting. And what really we need is if you can set up different areas of the room for different purposes and have different little environments for kids. Some kids like to be alone in the corner. One of my last grad students had a closet that she emptied everything out of and put a desk in the closet. Seemed like every period she had a kid that when they had seat work to do would prefer working in the closet. And she let him. It was sort of cool. Voice and choice. Temperature. The data shows that there's a range. And I looked all the way. When you find it, you email it to me because I can't find it's one sentence out of this 300-page book that says the right temperatures. And I didn't put it on your notes, so I can't find it. At any rate, they did a study. If you have temperatures in the high 60s, learning goes down. Remember, physical needs? And if it's above 76, learning goes down. So it looks like there's a range from 72 to 74, is my recollection, is about the right range for people. And you know full well, right now, some of you are warm in here. I'm warm. And so you're thinking about that instead of learning. So temperature becomes crucial. Arrangement of the room sends a message. This arrangement, we have, in some degree, no choice. It wouldn't be my choice. I never taught a class where people could see the backs of other people's heads. I limited the enrollment, so I never had a class where people could see the backs of other people's heads. Why? Because we're a family. We're a family. And a family has to communicate. And you cannot communicate when you can't see people's eyes. Because eyes are your pathway to the soul. So we have to think about how we're setting the room up. Is it stark naked? But at least here we've got people facing each other. Is this an interesting arrangement? Change your room around. Unless it's bolted to the floor, think about changing your room around periodically. Lots of light becomes crucial. Do you realize that the architect in charge of building schools in the state of California is also the primary architectural company that builds prisons? Just a correlation, folks. Draw your own conclusions. Here's an interesting thing with kids working together. There's stuff in the middle. They can access it and deal with it. Here's the future. I actually have a little helicopter that I'm still working with, and I'm having difficulty. I think it's a technology, but I actually can fly a helicopter mentally. And I put on a helmet just like this. It's a neat thing. This is the future. We're going to have kids doing some fascinating things. We're going to have kids, you're going to come in the class, and you're going to be saying this in like 5 years. Here's the statement. Well, boys and girls, today we are going to do some high beta followed with a little alpha, but I want absolutely no theta during the period. That's the kind of language they'll understand because we'll understand it. Okay, I'm going to leave you with a challenge. The last couple, 3 years of my teaching, I sort of came across this. We're talking, somebody mentioned Piaget up here. There are heroes in education. Certainly Piaget is a hero. He tried to pin it down to real ages, which was a flaw, but the concept were good because we know some people that didn't reach some of the levels of Piaget, and they're in this room. But at any rate, we have to realize the power of learning. What we had a conversation about right before the talk was deductive versus inductive. You see, Piaget said in 1964, once you learn something, you don't know what it feels like to not know it. I want you to really think about that statement. And you're going to teach others when you don't know what it feels like to not know it? And as a result, what we do is we start giving them all the details because we know where we're going. They don't. And they're going, where does this fit? Give me a hall tree so I can hang the pieces on. And that's what you need as a hall tree, and it's called big ideas. You need to start with the big idea and work to the details, not the other way around. You need to let them know where you're going. You have to sit down and reflect and figure out, what is the big idea I'm trying to teach here? How would I get them to understand the big idea so now we can give them details? That's how the brain works. And we need to figure out how to do that. So your challenge. I did this the last few years, and I really had fun with it. I want you to be a learner. This is somewhat contrived, but I'm going to show you what happened for myself on this one recently. I want you to identify a task, something you've thought about doing, but you never got around to doing it. You know, you're learning a language. Ballroom dancing was big in my classes because everybody was at that age where they were thinking about getting married, and they knew there was going to be a dance, and it freaked them. So they all were taking dance lessons so they could get married. If you dedicated like 15 to 30 minutes to this task, you might actually have something to show for your work. Wouldn't that be sort of fun? So, and then you can journal about the path and become part of this process of being a learner again. I had so much fun with this that I decided I had the privilege of doing a keynote address at the World Council for Science Education in Bangkok in January. And so on September 7th last year, 100 days before the talk, I decided that I would learn to play an instrument. By the way, I didn't really think about the ramifications of the fact that I didn't read music. So after 100 days, I stood in front of 2,500 people and showed them what you could do as a result of just doing something, for 100 days. And would you allow me the privilege of trying to show you what, I've actually fallen in love with this thing. And it's been less than a year. It is a Native American flute. This is a key of G. The fundamental note is G. It's sort of a fun little instrument. And I still play 10, 15 minutes a day. I try to anyway. So I'm going to share with you 3 short little songs because they have a purpose and why I'm going to share them with you. Okay. I'd like to think that all your classes have some feeling at times that's like that. We're together, we're a family, it's feeling comfortable. I would like to think that at the end of 2 days here, some of you will start pushing the envelope a little bit. And so if you push the envelope just a little bit, it might sound more like this. And just a few of you will be pioneers. And you will push the envelope for the whole building. And it might sound like this. Obviously, I'm not ready for Carnegie. However, the fact is, learning is best shared with everyone. And being part of that learning community and being part of something that's like your kids, that you're also trying to do something, steers off dementia, practices what you preach, and I gotta tell you, it's sort of fun. So I don't know what I'm gonna, well, actually, I do know what I'm going to do. You heard some music when you came in today? Even Nicolette doesn't know that everyone in the family at Christmas is going to get a Bonnstetter DVD, and they'll be forced to listen to it. I would like to just reiterate quickly the goal here of what we're up to. A story comes to mind. There was a turkey workshop. And this turkey was walking along the street and sees this big billboard. Turkey working shop. Come and learn how to fly and soar like eagles. It's only 3 days. Okay, I could do that. I could go learn some things. That'd be cool. So he goes to this turkey flying workshop. He's going, yeah, right. I'll sit through this crap. I need the CEUs. So by break time, they had these turkeys up on the back of the chair and sort of clumsily going to the floor, but with a little bit of grace as they practice. So by break, they're able to not kill themselves by going off the back of a chair. And by lunchtime, they have them up on a stage and going down to the floor of the gymnasium from the stage, just sort of coming down easy. It was working, baby steps. And by break in the afternoon, an entire workshop full of turkeys were soaring among the rafters. It was the most beautiful sight you'd ever seen. The high in the room was unbelievable. They could conquer the world. And they all walked home. The moral of the story is, this is 3 days of information. You will learn much at a conference. I love conferences. They ignite energy. They give you new ideas. You could learn from each of you in here. See, there really ought to be sessions in a conference where you get to share with what you already do that's great, that everybody else ought to do. That would be the whole agenda, is if we could just learn from each other all the great things that you're already doing. But doing it is the key. So be thinking, as I said at the beginning, this is persuasional, not just informational. Think about a rule of 7. Think about adding clustering. Think about adding something with that 30, 90, 10 rule. Think about what you can do in your classes that might make a difference. Think about teaching your kids about self and their brain. Think about teaching their parents about this stuff and what that could cause as well. It could be very exciting.